The air in the bridal suite felt thick and heavy, not with anticipation, but with a strange, almost electric tension that vibrated just beneath my skin. My bridesmaids, bless their oblivious hearts, flitted around me like excited butterflies, their chatter a muffled hum against the frantic pounding in my chest. They were adjusting my veil, smoothing the silk of my gown, offering sips of champagne I couldn't taste. I just smiled, a practiced, vacant expression that felt utterly alien on my face. Inside, a storm was brewing, a tempest of betrayal and icy resolve, carefully hidden behind the facade of a blushing bride. Today was supposed to be the happiest day of my life. The culmination of years of dreaming, months of meticulous planning, and what I once believed was a perfect love story. The venue, a grand old manor house with sprawling gardens, was exactly what I had always envisioned. The flowers, an elegant cascade of white roses and eucalyptus, scented the air with a delicate fragrance that now felt like a cruel joke. Every detail, from the hand-calligraphed invitations to the bespoke menu, had been chosen with such joy, such certainty. And for a long time, that certainty had been real. Let me take you back a bit, to a time when my world was painted in vibrant, hopeful hues. His name was Mark. We met at a mutual friend's barbecue, a casual Sunday afternoon that somehow turned into the beginning of everything. He had this infectious laugh, a deep rumble that made my stomach flutter, and eyes that crinkled at the corners when he smiled, which he did a lot around me. We talked for hours that first day, about everything and nothing, and by the time the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in fiery oranges and purples, I knew something special had just begun. Our relationship unfolded like a beautifully written romance novel. Dates filled with laughter, quiet evenings spent cooking together, long walks where we'd talk about our dreams and fears. He was attentive, kind, and always seemed to know exactly what I needed, sometimes even before I did. He supported my career ambitions, celebrated my small victories, and comforted me through the inevitable setbacks. He was, in every sense of the word, my rock. My best friend, my soulmate. At least, that's what I believed with every fiber of my being. The proposal was everything a girl could wish for. We were on vacation, a surprise trip he'd planned to a secluded beach in Thailand. One evening, as the sun was setting, casting a golden glow over the tranquil ocean, he got down on one knee. The diamond, a brilliant solitaire, sparkled against the fading light, but it was his eyes, filled with so much love and earnestness, that truly took my breath away. He spoke of a future together, of growing old, of building a family. I remember tears streaming down my face as I whispered, yes, my heart overflowing, with a happiness so profound it felt almost unbearable. It was a moment of pure, unadulterated joy, etched forever in my memory. The next few months were a whirlwind of wedding planning. Every decision, every tiny detail was a shared adventure. We picked out rings, tasted cakes, argued playfully over song choices for the reception. Our families were thrilled, our friends ecstatic. Everyone saw us as the perfect couple, destined for a lifetime of happiness. And why wouldn't they? We certainly projected that image, a flawless portrait of love and commitment. I was so utterly consumed by the dream, by the excitement, that I overlooked the subtle shifts, the tiny cracks that, in hindsight, were already beginning to appear. It started subtly, as these things often do. Mark became a little more distracted, a little less present. He'd spend more time on his phone, always claiming it was work emails or urgent calls from clients. He'd occasionally cancel plans at the last minute, citing unexpected emergencies at the office. I brushed it off, attributing it to the stress of his demanding job and the approaching wedding. We were both under pressure, after all. I told myself it was normal, that our love was strong enough to weather these small storms. I was so wrong. The discovery itself came not with a bang, but with a quiet, insidious whisper. It was a Tuesday, just 3 weeks before the wedding. I was working from home, wrestling with a particularly stubborn spreadsheet, when my laptop decided to stage a rebellion and promptly died. Frustrated, I wandered into Mark's home office, knowing he kept a spare charger for his work laptop, which was identical to mine. He was out at a supposed client dinner. The room was tidy, his desk clear, except for his work phone lying face down next to his monitor. I grabbed the charger, plugged it into my laptop, and waited for it to sputter back to life. As my screen flickered on, a notification popped up on Mark's phone. It was lying there, face down, but the vibration had shifted it slightly, revealing a sliver of the screen. A new message. From a contact I didn't recognize. The name was simply Chloe. My heart gave a strange, uncomfortable lurch. It wasn't the name itself, but the accompanying emoji. A small, red heart. A little alarm bell, faint at first, began to ring in the quiet of the room. My first instinct was to ignore it, to tell myself it was nothing, just a friend, a colleague. But the knot in my stomach tightened, a cold, hard lump of dread. I picked up the phone. It was unlocked. My hands trembled slightly as I navigated to his messages. And there it was, an entire conversation thread with Chloe, stretching back for weeks. My breath hitched in my throat. The first few messages were innocuous enough, work-related discussions. But then they shifted. Flirty emojis, inside jokes, late-night texts. And then, the undeniable. Every single client whose trust you so callously violated. By the time you leave this church, your reputation, your career, and your freedom will all be irrevocably shattered. I let go of Mark's hand, pulling mine away with a decisive motion. He stood there, frozen, a statue of ruin. Chloe had slumped against the altar rail, her face buried in her hands, sobbing uncontrollably. The officiant, looking utterly bewildered and distressed, stammered something about order, about respect for the house of God. But his words were lost in the rising tide of outrage and confusion. People were standing now, some shouting, some pointing, some rushing towards Chloe or Mark. I turned my back on the chaos, my white veil swaying gently as I moved. I walked away from the altar, away from Mark's shattered dreams, away from the wreckage of what was supposed to be my wedding day. My steps were firm, resolute. I didn't run. I didn't falter. I simply walked, the soft rustle of my dress the only sound I made amidst the growing uproar behind me. As I reached the grand oak doors of the church, a sense of profound liberation washed over me. The bitter taste was gone, replaced by a clean, clear feeling of vindication. I pushed open the doors, and sunlight streamed in, momentarily blinding me. I stepped out into the bright, clear day, leaving the pandemonium behind. A sleek black car waited at the curb, its engine idling softly. The driver, a discreet man I had hired weeks ago, opened the back door. I slid inside, pulling the veil from my head and letting it fall onto the seat beside me, a discarded symbol of a life I would never lead. The car pulled away smoothly, leaving the church and its shattered illusions behind. I looked out the window as we drove, watching the familiar streets pass by. The world seemed sharper, brighter, more real than it had in months. The wait was gone, the performance was over, and I had given the role of a lifetime. It was, indeed, a day none of them would ever forget. And neither would I. This was not the end of a story, but the beginning of my own, finally free from the shadows of deceit. The quiet hum of the engine was a lullaby of freedom, carrying me towards an unknown future, unburdened by the past. There was no regret, no remorse, only a profound sense of peace. The perfect bride, indeed. Perfect in her vengeance, perfect in her escape. My heart, once a stone, now felt light, cleansed. The air outside the car felt crisp and clean, a stark contrast to the stifling atmosphere of the church. I allowed myself a small, satisfied smile. It was over, and I had won. I leaned back against the plush leather seat, closing my eyes for a moment. The images of Mark's face, Chloe's tears, my mother's shock, replayed in my mind. There was no joy in their pain, no schadenfreude, just the cold satisfaction of justice served. I had not sought to destroy them for pleasure, but for retribution, for the restoration of a balance that had been so cruelly disrupted. The meticulous planning, the sleepless nights spent poring over documents, the careful extraction of information from unsuspecting sources. It had all led to this single, explosive moment. Every piece of the puzzle had fit perfectly, orchestrated with precision and unwavering resolve. The car continued its journey, taking me further and further away from the scene of the drama. I had booked a flight to a remote, private island under a new name, a place where I could truly disappear, heal, and rebuild. The money I had saved, carefully squirreled away over the years, would be enough to sustain me for a long time. It was a clean break, a complete severance from the life Mark had tried to trap me in. I opened my eyes, the smile still playing on my lips. The driver glanced at me in the rearview mirror, a flicker of curiosity in his eyes, but he remained silent, professional. He knew only that he was to drive me to a private airfield, no questions asked. I appreciated his discretion. The sun was high in the sky now, bathing the landscape in a golden glow. It felt like a fresh start, a true dawn after a long, dark night. The white dress, now crumpled on the seat beside me, was a relic of a past life, a symbol of a charade that had finally been exposed. I would shed it, along with the persona I had worn for so long. I thought of the guests, still reeling in the church. The whispers would turn to shouts, the shock to outrage. Mark's carefully constructed world would crumble around him, piece by agonizing piece. His business partners, his clients, his family, all would now see him for the deceitful man he truly was. And Chloe, poor, misguided Chloe, would face the consequences of her own choices. It was a harsh lesson, but a necessary one. My mind drifted to the future, to the quiet solitude of the island, the warmth of the sun on my skin, the sound of the ocean. A life free from lies, free from pretense, free from the constant vigilance required to navigate Mark's treacherous world. It was a future I had earned, a peace I had fought for. The car turned onto a private road, leading towards a small, exclusive airfield. A private jet sat on the tarmac, gleaming in the sunlight, its engines already whirring softly. My escape vehicle. As the car pulled up to the jet, I felt a surge of exhilaration. This was not messages about meeting up, about sneaking away, about how much he missed her. One message, sent just the night before, read, "Can't wait for this whole wedding charade to be over so we can finally be together properly." My heart stopped. The world tilted on its axis. I scrolled further, my vision blurring, my fingers numb. There were photos, not explicit but intimate. Selfies of them together, laughing, arms around each other. A picture of her hand intertwined with his. A picture of a hotel room keycard. The evidence piled up, each message, each image, a dagger twisting deeper into my chest. He wasn't just flirting. He wasn't just having an emotional affair. He was actively planning a future with someone else, using our wedding as a smokescreen, a countdown to their supposed freedom. The pain was physical, a searing, burning agony that consumed every inch of me. It felt like my lungs had collapsed, leaving me gasping for air in a vacuum. The betrayal was so profound, so absolute, it shattered my understanding of everything. Our love, our future, our entire history together. It was all a lie. A cruel, elaborate charade orchestrated by the man I was about to marry. I don't know how long I sat there, hunched over his phone, the glowing screen reflecting the tears silently streaming down my face. Time ceased to exist. The world outside the window, the birds chirping, the distant hum of traffic, all faded into an irrelevant backdrop. My universe had shrunk to this single, devastating truth. He was a cheat, a liar, a monster disguised as my loving fiancé. My initial reaction was a whirlwind of raw emotion. Shock, disbelief, incandescent rage, and a crushing, soul-destroying sadness. I wanted to scream, to throw his phone against the wall, to confront him the moment he walked through the door and tear him apart with my bare hands. I wanted to call Chloe, to expose her, to demand answers. I wanted to curl into a ball and simply cease to exist. But then, a strange calm descended. It wasn't peace, not by a long shot, but a cold, hard clarity. The tears stopped. My breathing steadied. A quiet, dangerous thought began to form in the shattered landscape of my mind. Confrontation, I realized, would only give him the satisfaction of seeing my pain. It would give him the opportunity to lie, to manipulate, to beg for forgiveness, or worse, to gaslight me. He would turn it around, make me feel like I was overreacting, or that I had somehow pushed him to this. No, he didn't deserve that. He didn't deserve my tears, my anger, or my explanation. He deserved to suffer. He deserved to feel a fraction of the humiliation and devastation he had so carelessly inflicted upon me. And I deserved justice, not just for myself, but for the innocent, hopeful girl who had believed in him, who had poured her heart and soul into building a future that was nothing but a cruel mirage. The idea of revenge, at first, was a fleeting, dark fantasy. But the more I thought about it, the more it solidified into a concrete plan. It couldn't be violent, that wasn't me. It couldn't be petty, a mere argument or a broken vase. It had to be impactful, it had to be public. It had to hit him where it hurt the most. His pride, his reputation, his carefully constructed image of himself as the successful, charming good guy. And it had to happen at the most significant moment possible, our wedding day. The thought of walking away, of canceling the wedding and disappearing, crossed my mind, of course, but the sheer injustice of it gnawed at me. Why should I be the one to bear the shame, the questions, the pitying looks? Why should he get to simply walk away, perhaps even with Chloe, leaving me to pick up the pieces of my shattered life in private? No. If he wanted to play games, I would play them better. The next few weeks were a blur of meticulous, covert operations. I became a ghost in my own life, moving through the motions of wedding planning with an eerie calm that fooled everyone. I smiled at fittings, nodded at florists, chatted with caterers, all while my mind was a hive of intricate calculations. Every conversation with Mark was a performance, every touch a lie. He would talk about our future, about how excited he was, and I would feign agreement, my heart turning to ice. The irony was almost unbearable. He was planning to end our engagement shortly after the wedding, and I was planning to end his life as he knew it. He chose the wedding. My first step was to secure the evidence. I carefully transferred all the messages and photos from his phone to a secure cloud drive. I knew I couldn't just rely on screenshots. I needed something undeniable, something that couldn't be dismissed as fake. I even went so far as to install a discreet recording app on his phone, set to activate whenever he was in his office, just in case he made any incriminating calls or voiced his plans aloud. Call it paranoia, call it meticulous planning, I called it insurance. Next, I needed to understand Chloe. Who was she? What was her connection to Mark? A quick, anonymous search on social media revealed she was a new hire at his company, a junior marketing executive, young, attractive, and clearly utterly oblivious to the fact that she was dating a man who was engaged to be married in mere weeks. Or perhaps, not so oblivious, I couldn't tell yet, but her public profile, her love for travel, her aspirations, it all painted a picture that was ironically similar to the life Mark and I had planned. The cruelest twist of all. I began to gather information, not just on Chloe, but on Mark's professional life. His clients, his colleagues, his reputation. He prided himself on his integrity, his strong work ethic, his unwavering commitment to his professional image. That, I decided, would be his Achilles heel. His personal betrayal was one thing, but if it touched his professional standing, if it questioned his character in the eyes of those who mattered to him professionally, the impact would be exponentially greater. I also started to subtly shift funds. Our joint account, which held a significant portion of our wedding savings, became a point of concern. I couldn't risk him emptying it or freezing it once the truth came out. Over several days, under the guise of paying various wedding vendors, I transferred substantial amounts into a separate, private account that he had no access to. It was a painstaking process, requiring careful timing and an innocent explanation for every transaction, but I managed to secure a significant portion of what was rightfully ours, ensuring I wouldn't be left financially vulnerable. He was too busy planning his escape with Chloe to notice these small, calculated movements. The hardest part was maintaining the charade with my own family and friends. My mother, so excited for her only daughter's wedding, would call daily, bubbling with enthusiasm. My bridesmaids organized a bachelorette party, a joyous celebration that I endured with a hollow smile, performing happiness like a seasoned actress. Each compliment on my glow, each excited remark about how lucky I was, felt like a fresh stab. But I knew, deep down, that their joy would eventually turn to anger on my behalf, and that fueled my resolve. My plan began to take shape, intricate and precise, like a perfectly designed clockwork mechanism. It would involve a public revelation, but not one of screaming or tears. It would be a moment of quiet, devastating truth, delivered with dignity, yet possessing the power to unravel his entire world. The wedding itself, the very stage he had set for his final act of deception, would become the platform for his downfall. I considered many options. A simple announcement at the altar. A scathing speech. But those felt too impulsive, too easily dismissed. I wanted something undeniable, something that would resonate with every single guest, something that would leave no room for doubt or denial. It had to be a story, a narrative, told in my voice but backed by irrefutable proof. And then it hit me. The perfect medium. Something universally understood, universally shared at weddings. The wedding speech. Specifically, my own speech. Every bride gives one these days, a heartfelt thank you to family, friends, and of course, a loving tribute to her new husband. Mine, however, would be different. It would be a tribute, yes, but not to the man I thought I was marrying, but to the truth he had tried so desperately to bury. The idea was terrifying and exhilarating all at once. It would require immense courage, unwavering composure, and flawless execution. I would need to deliver it perfectly, without breaking down, without showing the raw pain that still gnawed at me. It would be my finest performance, the role of a lifetime, and the stakes were higher than anything I had ever faced. I started writing. Not in a notebook, but on a secured document on my laptop, hidden deep within layers of innocuous files. The words flowed, at first haltingly, then with a fierce, almost vengeful energy. I crafted each sentence, each paragraph with precision, weaving together the story of our love, the story of his betrayal, and the undeniable evidence. I knew I couldn't just read the messages aloud. That would be too messy, too easily dismissed. I needed a visual aid. Something that would project his treachery for all to see. The venue had a large projector screen, usually reserved for a sentimental slideshow of childhood photos or a video montage of the couple's journey. That, I decided, would be my canvas. I began compiling the evidence into a presentation, a carefully curated sequence of his texts, his emails, the photos with Chloe. Each slide would tell a piece of the story, building to an undeniable crescendo. I even included a few short audio clips I'd managed to record, just snippets of his casual conversations with Chloe, confirming their plans, their voices, his laugh, her giggles. It would all be there, laid bare. The technical logistics were the trickiest part. I needed access to the projector system, discreetly, and at the right moment. Our wedding planner, a sweet, somewhat overwhelmed woman named Sarah, was handling all the AV equipment. I knew I couldn't involve her directly, but I could manipulate the situation. I feigned a sudden, overwhelming desire to create a surprise video montage for Mark, a romantic gesture. I spent hours with Sarah, learning the ins and outs of the projector, pretending to be a tech novice, asking endless questions about file formats and playback. I even created a completely fake, overly sentimental video, filled with our happy memories, to serve as a decoy. Underneath that decoy, however, was my real presentation, meticulously timed and ready to switch over at a moment's notice. I had prepared a special USB drive, disguised as a standard wedding photo stick, containing both the decoy video and my actual presentation. I practiced the switch countless times in my apartment, using my own laptop and a borrowed projector. Each time, I timed it down to the second, anticipating every possible glitch, every potential interruption. The muscle memory became ingrained. The casual approach to the AV table, the seemingly innocuous adjustment of a cable, the swift swap of USB drives. It had to look effortless, a minor technical hiccup, quickly resolved. My heart pounded during these rehearsals as if the stakes were already real, a testament to the magnitude of what I was about to do. The days leading up to the wedding were a blur of enforced cheerfulness. Mark was oblivious, wrapped up in the giddy excitement of a man about to embark on a new chapter, or so he believed. He would talk about our future, our home, the children we would have. Each word was a fresh stab, but I met them with a practiced smile, a gentle squeeze of his hand. I even managed to shed a few tears during our final dress fitting, tears he mistook for overwhelming joy. They were, in a way, tears of overwhelming emotion, just not the kind he imagined. My family, always so perceptive, seemed to sense a subtle shift in me. My mother, with her sharp eyes, asked if I was truly happy, if I had any doubts. I assured her I was ecstatic, that these were just pre-wedding jitters. She looked at me for a long moment, a flicker of concern in her gaze, but ultimately, she accepted my explanation. My father, ever the pragmatist, simply clapped me on the shoulder and told me to enjoy my day. Little did they know, I intended to enjoy it immensely, albeit in a way none of them would ever forget. The wedding morning dawned bright and clear, almost mockingly perfect. The air was filled with the scent of fresh flowers and nervous anticipation. My bridesmaids buzzed around me, a flurry of hairspray and laughter. I sat serene, almost detached, as they fussed over my hair and makeup. My mind was a calm, cold pool, focused entirely on the task ahead. I looked at my reflection, a beautiful bride in white, a picture of innocence and promise. The irony was a bitter taste in my mouth, but it also fueled my resolve. This was my performance, and I intended to give the role of a lifetime. Mark sent a note up with his best man, a sweet, heartfelt message about counting the minutes until I became his wife. I read it, felt nothing, and handed it to my maid of honor, who cooed over his romanticism. My heart was a stone. There was no room for sentimentality. There was no room for sentimentality, only a cold, hard purpose. Chloe, my maid of honor, squeezed my hand, her eyes sparkling with genuine happiness for me. She was a good friend, loyal and trusting. It was a shame she had to be a casualty of Mark's deceit, but some collateral damage was unavoidable. I offered her a small, tight smile, a perfect bridal mask. My mother entered the room then, her eyes already glistening. Oh, the theatrics! She embraced me, her perfume cloying. "My beautiful girl," she whispered, "you look like an angel." The irony was so thick, I could almost taste it. An angel, indeed. More like an avenging spirit. I allowed her to fuss, to smooth a stray strand of hair, to dab at her own tears with a lace handkerchief. Her joy was so pure, so uncomplicated, so utterly deluded. She saw the fairy tale ending she had always dreamed of for her only daughter. She saw security, status, a grand future. She saw everything Mark had promised and everything he had secretly undermined. The final adjustments to my dress were made. The pristine white silk flowed around me, a shroud of deception. My veil, delicate lace, obscured my face just enough to heighten the mystique, to keep my true intentions hidden behind a shimmering facade. I felt like a character in a play, perfectly costumed, perfectly made up, ready for the curtain to rise. My heart beat a steady rhythm, not of nerves, but of anticipation. This was it. The culmination of weeks, months even, of careful planning, of quiet observation, of gathering evidence. Every casual comment Mark had made, every late night, every canceled date, every evasive answer, had been meticulously cataloged, cross-referenced, and filed away in the cold recesses of my mind. A soft knock on the door. It was my father, his face beaming, a single tear tracing a path down his weathered cheek. He looked so proud, so utterly unsuspecting. He held out his arm, a gesture of protection and love. "Take a deep breath, sweetheart," he murmured, his voice thick with emotion. "Your big moment." I took his arm, the strength of his grip a stark contrast to the tremor in his voice. I took a deep breath, just as he instructed, and felt the cool air fill my lungs, steadying me. My big moment, indeed. The walk down the aisle felt like an eternity and a blink all at once. The church was filled with faces, a sea of smiles and well-wishes. Guests turned their heads, their expressions ranging from admiration to envy. I recognized family friends, distant relatives, Mark's colleagues, and his own family, all gathered to witness this sacred union. Each step was deliberate, measured. I could hear the rustle of my dress, the soft murmur of the organ music, the collective sigh of contentment that rippled through the pews. My gaze swept over them all, taking in their unsuspecting faces. They were all complicit in their ignorance, in their belief in the illusion Mark and I had so carefully constructed. Then my eyes met his. Mark stood at the altar, resplendent in his dark suit, a dazzling smile lighting up his face. His eyes, usually so calculating, were soft, filled with what appeared to be genuine adoration. He looked handsome, confident, every inch the successful, charming man everyone admired. He truly believed he had won. He believed he was getting away with it all, that he had played me for a fool, and was now securing his perfect trophy wife and cementing his public image. A flicker of something cold and sharp ignited within me. He was so utterly convinced of his own cleverness. As I approached, his smile widened, a beacon of false promise. My father gently squeezed my arm one last time before placing my hand into Mark's. Mark's fingers closed around mine, warm and firm. He gave my hand a tender squeeze, his thumb stroking my skin. I felt nothing. No warmth, no flutter, no sense of connection. Only a profound emptiness, where those feelings once resided, replaced now by an unshakable resolve. His eyes, so full of feigned love, met mine. "You look breathtaking," he mouthed, his voice unheard above the music, but his lips forming the words clearly. The compliment was a hollow echo in the cavern of my heart. The officiant began the ceremony, his voice resonating through the hallowed hall. He spoke of love, of commitment, of two souls intertwining. He spoke of the sanctity of marriage, of trust and fidelity. Each word was a fresh wound, a reminder of the mockery Mark had made of these very ideals. I stood beside him, a picture of serene devotion, my head slightly bowed, my hands clasped loosely in front of me. Only my eyes, when they occasionally lifted, betrayed the storm brewing beneath the calm surface. They held a glint, a silent promise of reckoning. The air grew thick with anticipation as the officiant moved towards the vows. Mark's voice was steady, confident, as he recited his promises, his gaze fixed on me. "I, Mark, take thee, to be my lawfully wedded wife, to have and to hold, from this day forward, for better, for worse, for richer, for poorer, in sickness and in health, to love and to cherish, till death us do part." Each word was a lie, a carefully constructed falsehood, designed to cement his position, to secure his future, to bind me to a life of his making. I watched his lips form the words, my mind detached, analyzing the performance. He was good, I had to admit, convincingly good. Then it was my turn. The officiant turned to me, a gentle smile on his face. "And do you take this man to be your lawfully wedded husband?" A hush fell over the room. All eyes were on me. This was my stage. This was my moment. I looked at Mark, my gaze unwavering. His smile was still in place, a little softer now, expectant. He waited, patiently, for my affirmation, for the words that would seal his victory. I took a slow, deliberate breath, letting the silence stretch, letting the weight of the moment settle on everyone. My voice, when it came, was clear, calm, and carried effortlessly through the church. I began, my voice steady, my eyes still locked with Mark's. I do take this man, Mark, to be my lawfully wedded husband. I do take him, with all his secrets, all his betrayals, and all his carefully constructed lies. A ripple went through the congregation. A few whispers started, confused, uncertain. Mark's smile faltered, a tiny crease appearing between his brows. His eyes narrowed almost imperceptibly, searching my face for an explanation. I continued, my voice gaining a subtle edge, a thread of steel weaving through the silken words. I take him, knowing full well that for better, he has chosen worse. For richer, he has chosen to steal. For poorer, he has left others. For sickness, he has inflicted pain. And as for in health, he has corrupted his own. To love and to cherish, he has chosen to deceive and to exploit. The whispers grew louder, morphing into gasps. Mark's face had gone pale. His hand, still holding mine, tightened almost painfully, but I did not flinch. His eyes, once soft, were now wide with dawning horror, a flicker of panic starting to show. And as for till death us do part, I said, my voice now resonant with a quiet, chilling finality, I believe our separation begins right here, right now. Because I could never truly be united with a man who has not only betrayed my trust, but has systematically defrauded his clients, embezzled funds from his own company, and yes, Mark, even managed to find time to carry on a sordid affair with my own bridesmaid, Chloe. The name hung in the air, a venomous echo. A collective gasp, louder this time, erupted from the pews. All heads swiveled towards Chloe, who stood a few feet away, her face a mask of shock, then horror, then a sickly shade of green. She clutched her bouquet, her eyes darting wildly between me and Mark. Mark's face was a study in pure terror. His jaw dropped, his eyes wide and unfocused. He tried to speak, but no sound emerged. He looked like a cornered animal, trapped and exposed. I continued, ignoring the rising commotion, my voice unwavering, each word a hammer blow. For those of you who are wondering, I have spent the last few months gathering irrefutable proof. Documents, emails, text messages, bank statements, even a few discreetly recorded conversations. All of it details Mark's elaborate scheme to enrich himself at the expense of others, including some of you here today. And Chloe, my dear friend, your role in helping him divert funds and your rather enthusiastic participation in his personal life will all be laid bare. I paused, letting the words sink in. The church was no longer silent. A cacophony of whispers, gasps, and shocked exclamations filled the air. My mother let out a strangled cry, her hand flying to her mouth. Mark's parents, seated in the front row, looked utterly devastated, their faces etched with disbelief and shame. I looked directly at Mark, his eyes now pleading, desperate. But there was no mercy in me. Not anymore. You see, Mark, I did intend to enjoy this day immensely, and I have. Because there is nothing more satisfying than watching a house of cards collapse, especially when you are the one who pulls the crucial card. I reached into the bodice of my dress, a small, almost imperceptible movement, and pulled out a sleek silver USB drive. This, I announced, holding it aloft for everyone to see, contains all the evidence. It has already been sent to the relevant authorities, to the press, and to